Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching the Today I Found Our YouTube channel, and in the video today we're looking at whether it's true that only 2 people know the recipe to Coca-Cola. And before we get started, I will say that this video is brought to you by Audible. You can go to audible.com/brainfood for a special offer for viewers of this channel. More about that at the end of this video. The idea that the secret formula for Coca-Cola is only known by 2 people who are never allowed to be near one another in case of some disaster resulting in the recipe being lost forever is one of those pop culture staples people can't help but perpetuate. Given this, it's perhaps not surprising that the spread of this idea has also been helped by various advertising campaigns done by Coca-Cola claiming just this. In fact, this idea actually started because of an advertisement by Coca-Cola, but we'll get to that in a bit. First things first, the exact number of people privy to the knowledge of how to make Coca-Cola isn't public knowledge. However, it's definitely more than 2, as the sheer volume of the syrup being produced every day, with slightly differing ingredients in different parts of the world, necessitate that quite a few people need to know at the least large portions of the ingredients and appropriate proportions of each in order to keep supplies flowing. This sort of volume just wouldn't scale well to only 2 people knowing how to make the product, especially if the extension of this myth were true, that each person only knows half of the ingredients. Besides not scaling well, this would be a recipe for disaster if anything happened to one of them and it wasn't written down somewhere. This is particularly why, in one ad campaign, Coca-Cola claimed the 2 executives are not allowed to fly on a plane together. At the least, it's probable the exact ingredients, though perhaps not the exact proportions, are known by numerous people working at Coca-Cola. For instance, certain of the company's accountants, particularly the higher-ups, are probably well aware of what goes into the company's staple product. Invoices would create a very detailed paper trail with which it would be very easy to get the exact list of ingredients, even if the company had different factories making different parts of the syrup. It would also be only slightly harder to figure out the exact proportions given the relative volume of each of the ingredients being ordered going into the factories and the exact output of syrup coming out. Beyond these employees who have deduced the ingredients and potentially the recipe, how many are intentionally made privy to the exact recipe? As noted in an interview with the marketing manager of Coca-Cola, not a lot of people know. The subject of that interview, Jackie Wansley, however, admits that she doesn't know the exact number of people who are in on the secret. The other important thing to all this is that whether every person who knows the recipe all up and died at the same time is irrelevant. As you might expect, contrary to versions of the rumor, the recipe is written down and stored in a cartoonishly large vault in Atlanta, Georgia. It's also possible, and very likely, that Coca-Cola maintains copies of the recipe elsewhere, whether in part with different people having access to each portion or as a whole. So where did this only 2 people legend start? Was there ever a point when only 2 people knew the recipe? Unequivocally, yes. The first person John Pemberton showed the final recipe to would have made 2. After that, it's pretty clear at least several people have known it at any given time. As for who the 2 were, Pemberton modified his Pemberton's French wine Cocoa to make Coca-Cola, partially as a response to the banning of alcohol in Atlanta, Georgia in 1886. The drink contained alcohol with the help of Willis Venable and Frank Mason Robinson. One of those 2 seemingly would have been the second. This would likely have quickly become 3 and more ever since. The secrecy surrounding the formula really began in earnest when Asa Candler bought exclusive rights to the recipe in 1891. Previous to this, Pemberton had sold the original formula to 3 different companies, meaning even more people knew it at this point. Once Candler had the exclusive rights, Asa supposedly had all copies of the recipe destroyed, or tried to, and relied on certain employees keeping the recipe memorized. Not a good long-term strategy for a major company, but this wasn't the billion-dollar behemoth it is today. It wasn't until the company changed hands in 1919 that the formula was once again given a physical form. That said, Coca-Cola has claimed before that the recipe was never written down until 1919, but this strains credibility. It is unlikely Coca-Cola creator John Pemberton didn't write down the many recipes he came up with in his quest to find a cure for morphine addiction, one of which resulted in Coca-Cola. When he taught it to others, such as members of the first few companies he sold the formula to, or those he tasked with making it, such as Frank Mason Robinson, it also would have been easier to simply write it down than to continually repeat it to them until they had it memorized. Coca-Cola had good reason to claim it was never written down, in that there are a few copies of the recipe for some some versions of Coca-Cola in existence, or at least claimed to be that. For instance, in 1996, the great-grandson of John Pemberton's employee, Frank Robinson, who incidentally named Coca-Cola and created the iconic cursive logo, had what he claimed to be the recipe written in his grandfather's own hand. That handwritten document was the subject of a divorce settlement, as Robinson's wife claimed he had given it to her as a wedding present. Coca-Cola denies such claims, but of course the only way to verify if they are telling the truth would be for them to reveal the Coca-Cola recipe, and as long as they continue to deny it, it really doesn't matter if others have the recipe. Take the exact Coca-Cola product and put it under a different brand name who can't claim it's the exact same product, and even if it were much cheaper and taste tests showed no one could tell the difference, most people would still buy Coca-Cola instead. This brand loyalty is largely why New Coke was killed off so quickly, despite it overwhelmingly being preferred in taste tests, even by people who were fighting to get the old Coke back. Further, in order to fully replicate Coca-Cola in the United States at least, you'd need something only one company has access to: cocoa leaves. Currently, only Stepan Company can import these leaves into the United States. They then process the leaves and sell the cocaine-free extract to Coca-Cola and cocaine to a pharmaceutical company. Thus, in order to make your own Coca-Cola, you'd need to convince Stepan Co. to branch out and sell to your company too. This is likely a tall order considering the pressure Coca-Cola would put on them not to. So now let's go back to the origin of the rumor. When Ernest Woodruff and a group of soon-to-be ridiculously rich investors bought the company outright in 1919, they did so using money secured by a loan. As part of the collateral for the loan, Woodruff had Candler's son write down the formula for Coca-Cola. It was then placed in a secure vault at Guarantee Bank in New York. According to Coca-Cola, the formula remained under lock and key until Woodruff once again took ownership of it when the loan was repaid in 1925. Rather than destroying the formula as Asa Candler had done, reducing the risk of it falling into someone else's hands, Woodruff opted to keep it and had it put into secure storage, this time in an Atlanta bank vault at Trust Company Bank, where it sat for 86 years. From that description alone, it's clearly impossible that only two people knew the recipe even at that point. At the least, you have certain members of Pemberton's friends, family, and business partners who are still alive: Candler, Candler's son, Woodruff and his investors, and those providing the loan, who would surely have asked to see the recipe and possibly taste the product they witnessed being made from it to verify what was being put in the vault was genuine. So why did Woodruff keep the formula written down? If the few versions of the recipe that exist in the public eye are valid, it's not like it's that complicated a formula. It would not be difficult to memorize. Well, the answer has less to do with people being able to read the formula and more to do with what it represented, something special, which is the same reason, even to this day, Coca-Cola plays up the existence of the highly secured recipe in written form and at various times has been happy to stoke the flames of the only two people know myth. By playing up the secrecy surrounding the formula, Woodruff was able to convince the public that Coke was something awesome and special. This was not an uncommon marketing trick then or now. In fact, as part of a marketing stunt back then, it was publicly announced that only two Coca-Cola officials would ever have the full knowledge of how to produce the syrup at any one time when Woodruff got his hands back on the formula. However, while the media was being spoon-fed the story and churning it out to the public, at least 4 people in the company are known to have been able to produce the syrup in full, and it is thought that they probably weren't the only ones. Of course, today, all of the people privy to such information are likely under strict instructions to never reveal they know it, lest they want to stare down a life-destroying lawsuit from one of the most powerful commercial entities on Earth, not to mention perhaps losing their jobs if they still work there. This still leaves the potential for someone to go all Ocean's 11 on the written version of the formula. We can only hope we didn't just inspire what would no doubt be an extremely lucrative Ocean's 14 movie given the product placement potential. However, we weren't kidding when we said that the formula is contained in a cartoonishly secure vault. Even if you get into the giant vault, there are still layers of security you'd have to go through to get the recipe. You see, in a much more recent marketing stunt for Coca-Cola's 125th anniversary in 2011, they moved the written formula from one Atlanta vault to into an even more secure custom-built vault amidst a media circus. The fact that this custom vault is a part of the world of Coca-Cola and they turned it into an interactive exhibit for the public would once again suggest that they're more concerned with the publicity and enigma surrounding the formula than the actual information it contains. And even if it was stolen, assuming said paper with the recipe is really in the vault, Coca-Cola could just deny it and claim the recipe was still safely tucked away and it really wouldn't matter that the true recipe was, seemingly once again, out there for public consumption. And now for some bonus facts. While there were initially different versions of Coca-Cola being sold by different manufacturers that Pemberton sold the recipe to, all the versions contained cocaine, with some estimates of up to 9 milligrams of cocaine per serving. However, Asa Candler claimed that his formulation included only around 1/10 of the original formula's amount of cocaine, and by 1903 he removed cocaine from Coca-Cola by using spent cocoa leaves left over from the cocaine extraction process. This still resulted in Coca-Cola having trace amounts of cocaine though. They've since gotten around this with a better extraction process which is used by the Stepan Company in Maywood, New Jersey, as previously mentioned. And another bonus fact, the term soda pop was a moniker given to carbonated beverages due to the fact that people thought the bubbles were produced from soda, sodium bicarbonate, as with certain other products that were popular at the time. A more correct moniker would have been carbonated pop. The pop part of the term came about in the early 19th century, with the first documented reference in 1812 in a letter written by English poet Robert Southey. In this letter, he also explains the term's origin. Called on A. Harrison and found he was at Carlisle, but that we were expected to supper. Excused ourselves on the necessity of eating at the inn, supped there upon trout and roast fowl, drank some most admirable cider, and a new manufactory of a nectar between soda water and ginger beer, and called pop, because pop goes the cork when it is drawn, and pop you would go off too if you drank too much of it. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. As I mentioned at the beginning, this video was brought to you by Audible. Audible is a pretty amazing service. Now, I became pretty obsessed with audiobooks a few years ago, and since then I've pretty much worked them into all areas of my life. I'm a big runner, so I'm always listening when I'm running or doing chores or on long flights or car journeys. It basically means that I can learn or be entertained whenever I'm doing other stuff. In fact, I became such a big audiobook listener that I even bought this thing, which is a shower speaker, like a Bluetooth shower speaker, so I can listen to Audible while I'm in the shower. Audible has an unmatched selection of audiobooks, audio shows, news, comedy, and more from the leading publishers, broadcasters, entertainers, magazines, and newspapers. So if you enjoyed this channel and you watched all the way to the end of the video, so I hope that you do, then I'd like to recommend a book on Audible that you would probably like. In the book, they answer the kind of similar questions, the sort we would answer on this channel. The book is called When to Rob a Bank, and it's written by the same guys who brought you the very famous book Freakonomics, which is another Audible book that you can get on there. I think I have listened to the audio version of that one as well. Both are great books. You can get them both on Audible. All you need to do is go to audible.com/brainfood and you can get a free audiobook. You can choose any book from their huge selection, and even if you cancel your membership, you get to keep all of the books that you've got as part of your membership, including that free book. So Audible is offering, as I mentioned, a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. All you need to do is go to audible.com/brainfood and browse their selection of audio programs. It's that easy. And as a member, you also get 30% off all of their regularly priced books. And if you decide to continue your membership, you get a free book every single month. So all you have to do is go to audible.com/brainfood. Thanks for watching.